Welcome to God of War Ragnarok. I'm going to be doing a brief playthrough here of a bit towards the end. Not going to give away the ending of the game in case you're going to play it, but it is a little bit closer to the end. I'm also going to be narrating on top and discussing agency in this game. How much agency is the player afforded, and is that agency meaningful towards the narrative, or is it more superficial just towards the visual aesthetic of the game? This game is produced by Santa Monica Studios and under the correct creative directive leadership of Corey Barlog. The studio itself and Corey were also the producers of the 2018 first installment of this series called simply God of War. You're probably familiar with the first three titles technically in the franchise, which came under a different company and under a completely different creative direction earlier in the 2000s. So those games we won't bring as a part of this. We'll just focus on this game and occasionally reference the 2018 release, simply titled God of War. These games dating back to 2018 are some of my favorite games of all time in terms of playability. In terms of story and narrative, they may be my favorite game of all time. One of my favorite stories of all time at this point. It's just absolutely fantastic. But the game presents an interesting form or amount of agency for the player. Contrary or in contrast to very open world, open games like Lord of the Rings Online or World of Warcraft or something console based, maybe like Skyrim, God of War Ragnarok has all of the visual feel of those grand open, fully open world games, which provide players with almost unlimited agency. In those games, Lord of the Rings Online, World of Warcraft, Skyrim, you select everything from your race, your visual, your armor, what you do at any moment, where you go. God of War, you have to advance the story that the game wants you to. And here is a great example. I had the agency prior to this second to select which bad guy I wanted to go. I could have chosen a different weapon. I could have done various things in that little battle arena back there. But once I progressed forward, the game takes control in an in-game sort of narrative cutscene, if you will. It's not cinematic cutscene, but it is certainly an in-game cutscene. And it takes control and it advances the narrative free of any input from the player. So, maybe better said, the player has no agency to affect the direction of the narrative. At no point in this game do you have the option to go a different path. And you'll even see quite literally, and while I meant a different path, figuratively in that sentence, like you don't have the option to change the story points, you don't have the option to go off the physical path. It's very grand, it's very open world feeling. But here's a great example. I can't go down that cliff. I have to go up and follow the symbols. I have to go the path it wants. You can do some things along the way. I can smash some boxes and try and get some silver, but as you see me trying to run here, there's absolutely nothing I can do. So it is not an open world game. It might be an open-end with a hard D on the end. Opened world game as in it's a very open world. There's a lot of things to do in this grand environment, and a lot of the time you can choose when you do things. But like I said, and this is another perfect example, I ascended that platform and the game takes control from me. And now this will be a little bit more of an extended cutscene. But it's like every player who plays this game anywhere in the world will get to this moment and the exact same thing will happen. No matter what weapon you are using or what abilities you chose to give, no matter what agency you flexed for yourself and how that differs from what I chose, we all play the exact same narrative. What is that narrative? Let's take a minute and just talk about the story of the game. Like I said, it's just an absolutely fantastic story. This is a sequel to the 2018 game, and the narrative is an absolute sequel to that as well. So quickly, and very quickly, in the 2018 game, very broad stroke, Kratos is our main character, not pictured in this playthrough as of yet. We'll see him in just a minute. Kratos is the former Greek god of war. He fled the Greek mythological lands and landed somewhere in the Norse mythological lands. We're not using real geography here. We're really just using mythology to establish geographic concepts of Norse being probably somewhere snowy and maybe Scandinavian, and the Greek stuff being, a little more, as it sounds, Mediterranean and Greek. Like I said, Kratos has fled the Greek mythological lands. When the 2018 game picks up, he has already met and married somebody in this Norse lands and had a son who goes by the name Atreus. Atreus is the character you've seen me playing here on the screen so far. Interesting that we're not using Kratos, considering he is, like I said a minute ago, the main character. And that in itself is an interesting comment on agency. You do not have the choice when you play as Kratos or when you play as Atreus. You have no option. So similar to how, again, in this cutscene, which an extended dramatic cutscene, you have no option. You haven't seen any dialogue trees. You haven't seen any conversation prompting. The story is advancing itself free of the player's input. But man, what a story it is. So Kratos has his son Atreus. His wife has passed. They've buried her. In quite an adventure that constitutes the entire of the 2018 game. Twists and turns have been revealed. They make it back home to their house at the bottom of the mountain, quite literally. And that's a broad stroke of the 2018 game because it's not important. So now let's pick up with the 2022 release, Ragnorak here. What we are trying to do is essentially stop the Norse gods, primarily stop Odin, the Allfather, the primary Norse god, from gaining unlimited knowledge of the universe and subverting the Ragnarok apocalypse that would signal the end of his life and the end of the reign of the Norse gods. We're trying to figure out, is Ragnarok real? Is it good? Is it bad? And we're really trying to establish origins of our own characters in some regards. But really we're trying to fight the sense of prophecy. This game uses the ideas of prophecy and fate to really drive its narrative home and create a sense of urgency and a sense of conflict. It's what creates the character development almost exclusively. As you've seen me doing a lot, so this is a hack and slash game in a lot of ways. You're very brutally going through the world, taking out enemies left and right. You actually kill enemies to get health back. You're interacting all the time with the world. And so as you see here in the red and white, this is Kratos. He is the primary character of the larger God of War franchise. If given the nature of hack and slash games, feedback comes almost instantly to you. You will not be able to go, as you see me here, I cannot go a certain direction. I can't destroy the boxes. I have to go the way it wants. I can't break through the fence. You must do the things the game is telling you to do in terms of combat. You will die. Your character will die, and you'll have to restart elsewhere. Feedback is an instantaneous part of this game. The game, through the narrative and through the way that I guess you could say, lack of agency in the narrative, it really brings you into your seat as an observer for the story in some regards, but it straps you in there because of the quality of the narrative. So as you play the game, you do really feel like the characters. You do really feel like you are advancing the story, even though in some regards you're not affecting the story. Like the game, if you chose not to go up that platform that prompted that cutscene, nothing would happen in the game, right? You have to advance the scene. But you are given agency, as you see on the screen here, to make decisions like, what skills do I want to advance, or special abilities? What armor do I want? Those kinds of things. Chris Crawford in our Module 2 readings talked about how there's an interactive conversation that takes place between the game and the player. And I chose this game really because it offers such an interesting view of a form of that conversation. I think there may be a misconception that this game is exceedingly open world as to games I've alluded to previously in this video. But but I think as you've seen in this video, and as I have discussed, you don't have the broad agency to affect the direction of the story that you do in some of those other mentioned games. You are bound to the story the game wants to tell. I don't think that any of the agency you do or don't have detracts from that conversation that Crawford alluded to. I think that the quality of the hero's journey that Kratos and Atreus is starting to go on, I think the next game is going to be Atreus' hero's journey, but that's just me. So again, this game is just a fantastic embodiment of a form of agency that trades off with the narrative to really have the narrative shine and be the strongest point of this game.